Well, hey there, my golf friends, and welcome back to Above Par. It's nice to have you here. We're on the week between Christmas and New Year's, so I hope you're having a wonderful holiday and, of course, have big things planned for 2022. I plan to help you with a lot of that here on the podcast, so make sure you stay tuned. But I wanted to end 2021 with a different podcast, a podcast about golf and family and connection and the small world of golf. You know, it's so often that we talk in the golf community about how small golf really is. Once you're in the world of golf, there's so many different connections that you make with people from all walks of life when we get connected through the game of golf. I have a personal story to share with you today about the small world of golf and how it connected a new family member to us. And is golf genetic? Is there a component of it that there's an aptitude for it or a personality trait that just attracts us to the whole dynamic of the game of golf? And then there's also a component to this story about you never know what life is going to throw at you and when it's going to throw it at you, but there's always an opportunity to open yourself up to love and connection and compassion and empathy. So about 4 years ago, my family grew in size, and it was all through the game of golf. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I'd like to introduce you to my brother, Joe Dole. Hey, Joe Dole, how are you?
I'm good, Kathy. Good. Great to be on with you.
I'm so glad you're here. I've been wanting to have you on. You know that I've talked about this with you and Dudley and my dad about our dad, about how cool of a story this is. And just having you come into our lives for one thing, and then the genetics of golf, the possibility that golf is actually genetic, because we have a big golf family. And I don't know, there's a lot of families in the golf industry, especially in a lot of professional golfers who have kids who turn into professional golfers. You know, is it some of it environmental and some not environmental or genetic? I don't know. I'm not really here. I said to you to solve that question. I don't think you can, but I think we have a very cool story. And I just wanted to share it with all my listeners about how you came into our lives. How many years ago?
4.
4 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
4 years ago.
Well, 4 and a half, actually, April 2017.
Okay. Oh, wow. Look at you. Yeah, I guess you would remember that day.
It's kind of significant for me.
So why don't you share with anybody a little bit about your background? When did you start playing golf?
Well, I wanted to start playing golf when I was 7 or 8 years old. I went and asked my adoptive parents if I could play. My best recollection, it's hazy because I was a kid, was that I saw probably a Masters or a US Open on TV and really wanted to play. And not surprisingly, because neither of them were golfers, neither of them were athletes of any kind. They kind of viewed it as a childish impulse, brushed it off. Right. But that's the first time I remember wanting to play. I didn't actually start playing until I was 14. And I had some friends who had fathers who played at a local public course that was really, really close to the house I grew up in. You could ride your bike to it. And so I started playing with them when I was 14, convinced my parents to go down to a local discount store, get me a set of odd numbered irons and some wood clubs, I think, that were made out of some kind of plastic.
No way.
They definitely were not real wood.
Yeah.
And so we'd throw our bags over our shoulders, ride our bikes down to the course, and the local pro there, a guy named Bucky Hewitt, was really good to the kids, and he'd let us play as many holes as we wanted to. So I can remember Saturdays, and this is before any of us had jobs, when we just keep going around and around and around, 45 holes.
Wow.
And when we were done with that, we'd putt for nickels and dimes on the practice green until it was too dark to see anymore. Right. So I was lucky. I had a group of friends like that who were all into it about the same way I was into it. And that's really when I started playing. No lessons, no nothing. At some point when I was in high school, I think I read Jack Nicklaus's book, tried out for the golf team. Really, now I didn't know how ignorant I was about the game at that time, but tried out for the high school golf team, made the team. Wasn't one of the better players on the team because I really didn't know what I was doing, but that was it. I was bitten.
Yeah.
Before that, I'd been playing football, baseball, hockey. I just stopped playing football and baseball and played golf whenever I could play. Still played hockey in the winter when.
Because your your adoptive parents weren't very athletic. Yeah. They were
not at all.
Teacher? Was it a school?
Not at all. Yeah. My father was a high school math teacher for more than 30 years. My mother started out as a high school music teacher, but then when they adopted me and later my sister, she just became a homemaker, stopped
Wow.
teaching. Yeah.
Okay. So you played high school golf. You went and you played golf in college. Yeah.
I did not play golf in
Oh, you
college.
didn't. Okay.
Yeah. No, I was I was working as much as I could to put myself through school. And frankly, I didn't think I was good enough to make even an Ivy League college golf team. And I was probably right about that. But luckily enough, both undergrad and law school, the schools I went to had great golf courses. You could play if you were a student, you'd get a membership for $100 a semester and you're playing Robert Trent Jones golf courses. It was great. So I kept playing. I went to Cornell undergrad, Yale Law School.
Oh, Yale Law School. Wow, you're smarter than the rest of us.
Yeah, well, I know that's what all of you say. I'm not so sure that's true.
You might take my pivot, but I might take your brains.
Right. No, as you know, one of my first conversations with Dudley, he made some similar remark, and I said, Dudley, every law firm partner that I play golf with would give their eye teeth to be able to do what you do as good as you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So funny. Our office is different, right? It's outside. People are like, oh, I do anything just to, what is it like just to play golf all day? I'm like, well, the golf course becomes your office, but it's so much different than looking at a screen.
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward, you don't remember when you were adopted, but when did it come back up into your life again?
Okay. So yeah, as long as I can remember, I've known that I was adopted. My parents must have told me when I was really little. And I was born in 1959. And so for a long time, most of my life, you didn't have access to any sort of information about your birth parents. And the law is different now in New York, but for a long time, you simply could not find out. And so I'd kind of resigned myself to, I'll never know, and it's always a question you have. Well, about 20 years ago, my wife was legislative counsel to a New York State senator. And she came home one day. They'd been working on some changes to New York's adoption laws. She came home one day and said, you can write away to the New York State Department of Health and you can get some information about your birth parents. You won't be able to find out who they are, but you can get, some medical information that might be useful to you. So I did it. Got back a lot more information than I expected to get. Physical descriptions of my birth parents, descriptions about their families, even descriptions about what my birth grandparents did for a living. And part of the description of Chuck was that he was a great high school athlete, including really good baseball player and golfer. So this is 20 years ago. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting because, I always wondered where my love of golf came from. And it really stuck with me. So I took those adoption records, put them in a folder, stuck them in my desk drawer, and they stayed there for the better part of 20 years. So fast forward to December of 2016. I'm living in Kingwood, Texas at the time, which is a suburb of Houston. And my sons and my wife got me an Ancestry DNA testing kit for Christmas. Yeah. And I thought that's kind of cool because the adoption records had some information about my ethnic background. But I thought, okay, the Ancestry DNA test will give me a little bit more precise information about that. So I put some saliva in a little plastic vial and I filled out some paperwork and I sent it back to Ancestry. A few weeks later, probably 4 or 5 weeks later, I get the results from Ancestry. And they're about what I expected, right? I mean, United Kingdom, Scotland, England, Ireland, Northern France, it's similar to what the adoption records told me. So I thought, all right, that's pretty cool. It's good. The boys will know, right, where they come from on my side of the family. And that was my only expectation. A couple weeks after I got those test results back, I get an email through Ancestry from a woman in Vernon, New York, which is probably 30, 40 miles east of Syracuse. And she said, hey, I see from Ancestry that you and I are second cousins. Do you know how we might be related? Well, that blew my mind. I mean, I either checked a box or I forgot to check a box, and allowed Ancestry to share that information. So I was very surprised. I wrote back to her and I said, I have no idea how we're related. I gave her a little bit of my story, when I was born, where I was adopted. And in that information I gave her, I mentioned that the adoption record said my birth father was a great high school athlete, including a great golfer. She immediately writes back and says, oh, Dudley Hart is my second cousin. Maybe his father is your father.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that was really stunning.
Yeah.
Because everybody in upstate New York knows who Dudley is. Anybody connected with golf knows who Dudley is, right? Yeah. So I look at that and I think, yeah, right. Dudley Hart's my brother. That's pretty.
Yeah,
funny.
Because you knew who Dudley was at that time when someone said that, right? It's like someone, if it
absolutely.
Yeah, because if you weren't a golfer and someone said, "Oh, Dudley Hart might be related to you" or something, you'd be like, "Who the heck is that?"
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, but I knew who he was. I mean, at that point, that was after Dudley and Jeff Sluman and Chuck had owned Country Club of Syracuse.
Right. So they were local.
The Syracuse area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So everybody connected with golf knows who Dudley is in upstate New York. But so as implausible as I thought that probably was, right, in part given what I regarded as my golf ability, it was intriguing enough to set me down a research trail.
Yeah.
Right. So first I'm doing some Google searches to find out who Chuck is, doing some research through Ancestry. I can't remember how I got onto it, but I figured out that the Cazenovia Republican, and Chuck grew up in Cazenovia, New York, right, mm-hmm. which is a little bit east of Syracuse. The Cazenovia Republican was searchable online, including back issues going back as far as you want to go.
I know, because I remember asking you, I'm like, did you thumb through like microfiche? Remember microfiche?
Yeah, right. No, I do. I remember it very well.
The people who are younger will like be micro, what?
And the stuff is always falling off the rolls. And this was easy. I mean, I could do name searches in the Cazenovia Republican back in the 1950s.
Yeah,
right?
Wow.
Yeah, one of the good things about the internet. So I'm doing that research, and I'm trying to shorten this story a little bit because this was 2 solid weekends, Saturday and Sunday.
And I'm sure preoccupied your time during the week, your mind during the week. You're probably thinking a lot about it.
Especially on my long commutes to downtown Houston to my office building.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm getting a lot of information about Chuck. And he shows up week after week in that local newspaper for football, basketball, baseball, golf. I mean, he's winning local amateur tournaments. He's playing in the New York State Junior Am. And that's all in the local paper.
Yeah.
Until July of 1958, which would have been the summer after his junior year of high school, when he just disappears from the record. Yeah. And that's about the same time my birth mother would have been pregnant with me. Right. Yeah. So that was a major clue for me. There were some other things in that research trail too, but I finally got to the point where I was like 95% confident that Chuck could be my birth father. And by the way, I'll mention it here because I think it's important to this story. Without golf, I would never have been able to focus my research to the point where I got any kind of level of confidence. Yeah. Because Chuck's father, my birth grandfather, was one of 17 siblings. Yeah.
So they were reproducers.
Right. I mean, that poor woman. I can't imagine.
Oh my gosh.
Right? But if that woman in Vernon, New York had just written back to me and said, "Oh, I think you might be related to the Harts of Cazenovia," where do you even start?
Yeah. With
a family that size. So anyway, I get about 95% confident that Chuck's my birth father. And I talked to my wife about it. And I said, should I write him a letter? And she says, yeah, go for it. Right. And it was a little easier for me to do than it might have been for some other people to do because I knew what Chuck had done with his life. Right. Mm-hmm. I knew he wasn't doing 25 to life in Attica.
Yeah.
Right?
Like this is a risk, right? You can call someone else, and we've joked about this before. I mean, not that I'm going to downplay any lifestyle, but we could have been like serial criminals or something, right?
Sure.
Bank robbers.
Yeah. So it made writing the letter a lot easier, right?
Right.
Because, I mean, Dudley's got a great reputation. I didn't know who you were at the time. You've got a great reputation, right? Yeah. And I knew something about Chuck. So I started out, I sent an email to Lakeshore Country Club,
mm-hmm. right? Which is a club that my father and Dudley own up in Rochester.
And I didn't know at the time, I sent the email saying, look, I'd like to write Chuck a personal letter. Can I send it to Lakeshore? Didn't know at the time that his wife was the person who responded to that email and said, yeah, sure, send it here.
Yeah.
So this is in late February, early March of 2017. I send Chuck the letter. I kind of start with the conclusion, sorry for intruding on your life, but here's why I'm doing it. Tell him a little bit about myself and tell him that I think he might be my birth father, with apologies in advance if I'm wrong.
Oh,
right. Because I could have been wrong.
Right. And then it just becomes an awkward email or letter, right?
Sure. And I don't know if I'm going to get a response or not. And frankly, like 4 weeks go by and I hear nothing. So I think, okay, either I was wrong or this is not something that he wants to deal with, and that's okay. What I didn't know was that he spends the winters in Florida.
Right. Right. So your mind in that time is creating this story like, oh, I went down this wrong path. Maybe it's the wrong person. Maybe they want nothing to do with this story and want to cut that part of their life, not remember any of it.
Sure. Yeah. Which would have been perfectly understandable. Yeah, I mean, totally. This was upstate New York in 1959, right? I mean, teenage pregnancies were not viewed then as they are now. And it was a big deal and it was a scandal, right? Mm-hmm. So you could understand if somebody didn't want to revisit that, 60 some years after the fact. But anyway, I didn't know he was in Florida. So 4 or 5 weeks go by. It's now early April and I am at a Texas tradition, a crawfish boil at my neighbor's house. And I don't know why, but I'd left my phone on the kitchen counter. It's later in the evening. I go back to let the dog out and I see my phone on the counter. I got a voicemail from a 585 area code, which is Rochester. So I listen to it and darned if it isn't Chuck calling me and saying, Mr. Dole, I received your letter. I think you're right. Please give me a call. Mm. So I called him right away. I didn't hesitate. And I'll tell you, Kepi, I have no recollection of that conversation. Yeah. None. Right. I mean, it was so emotional as my wife would say, it was like I was hitting the back of the head with a shovel.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm usually a reasonably articulate person, but I don't remember what we said, except that we agreed that I was going to come up to Rochester and meet him. Hmm. But, it was just like Chuck, as soon as he got back in Florida, from Florida, saw the letter. I mean, he didn't hesitate. He contacted me immediately, and that's who he is.
And so from my perspective, just going to tell you my side of the story when this happened, and then we'll go back to how you guys connected and when we connected. But so my dad calls me and he calls Dudley and he said, so I have something to tell you. I'm like, all right. He goes, you have a half brother. Right. And so my jaw dropped, right? It's kind of like your life goes back in time, like, whoa, right? All the stories that they told you about how your parents connected and where they spent their life, all was falling apart, but also like there were gaps in there that Dudley and I were like, what the heck? Like, what the heck happened to us? And my sister, Carrie, that, hasn't he told us? We couldn't figure out what happened between the time that he was in high school up in Cazenovia, and then he ended up in a Bolles military academy in Jacksonville and was playing football down there. And he never really made the connection on why he got down there. But to tell you all the story from my dad's point of view, he came home from a practice in, let's say August or September, some practice with school. And he said he walked into the living room, and there in the living room was your mother and 2 sets of parents. And the parents, his dad said, this is the way it goes down. If he's told you the story and it's different, let me know. But his dad said, this is the way it's going to go down. You're going to go away and you're going to get shipped off and go to military school, and you're going to go away to the nunnery and have a baby, and you guys will never talk to each other again.
Yeah, that's very close to what he told me.
Yeah. And so we were like going, what the heck is happening? And so it made sense now why he went to a military academy for sure. Right. And how he got down there and telling the stories of, playing football for Bolles Academy, but we couldn't figure out why he went down there. So yeah, that's basically the way he told us. He goes, you have a half brother. His name's Joe. He gave me the background story, just like I just told right there, and then waited for me to respond. And basically, I think Dudley and I said the same thing. When do we get to meet you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's the way you guys are.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember one of probably the first time I played with Dudley, Country Club of Buffalo, which was probably that summer of 2017. I remember remarking to him, Dudley, I can't believe how accepting you and Kathy and everyone in the family have been of this stranger who suddenly entered your lives, and about whose motivation you know nothing. And he just looked at me like I was nuts and said, well, what else would we have done?
Yeah, for sure.
But that's the way all of you are.
Yeah. So then you fast forward and you went up to visit my dad up in Rochester.
Just for a day, had lunch with him. It was kind of a first meeting. We're feeling each other out.
Yeah, I imagine you probably wouldn't show each other your golf games the first meeting.
Yeah, no, and I remember the first meeting, and that was about as nervous as I've ever been on a first tee because I'm playing with Chuck and I'm playing with Dudley, and it was. I mean, I played some tournament golf over the years, but nerves I've had playing any kind of tournament golf could not compare to the nerves I felt on the first tee that day.
See, I could have coached you, Joe.
Yeah. Well, right. If I'd had the benefit of your podcast before that.
My podcast wasn't going on then. Yeah.
No, I don't think it would have made any difference. It's just it was the situation.
I would have, what my advice would have been to you? Just be nervous. You're not going to be able to talk yourself out of it. Just enjoy the day. Go be nervous. Yeah.
Right. Now, just try to get the club face on the ball. Right. Yeah. I was trying to do. So April 2017 was when we first met. I met Dudley later that summer. I met you later. I think it was that first summer. At Cary, like the following winter down in Florida. And it's been this wonderful relationship. And I got to stress again, without golf, I mean, we have this thing in common, but without golf, I firmly believe I would not know any of you, and I would still be in the dark. Yeah. About my birth relatives.
Yeah, it definitely helped in your research. But the thing that I thought is so ironic is there's just, and is it coincidence? Whatever. It doesn't matter. I just think they're kind of fun little connections that we have besides the golf connection, and that. I grew up in a golf environment, my dad being a golf pro. I went to the golf course every single morning in the summer. Granted, it's Buffalo, so it's a short summer. I'd go out at 5:30 or 6 in the morning with him every morning and hang out all day and just do golf all day. Right. So totally different lifestyle. So golf was a part of my life, where golf wasn't a part of your life, yet you still gravitated towards it. I think is so cool. It's just, that's the part that I think is really so amazing about that connection. And questioning, is it kind of one of those things that someone either definitely has an aptitude and innate desire to play, maybe a mindset.
I mean, it's hard to generalize from one personal experience, right? But it seems too much to me to be coincidence. Yeah. That there had to be some kind of genetic component to this that got me interested in the first place, then really got me bitten by it, and gave me enough of a skill level to start with no instruction where I could hit it good enough to make the high school golf team. Yeah. That just, there's no other place that could come from. I guess the other side of the argument is if I hadn't had these friends who were playing when I was 14 years old, maybe I would never have would have picked up a set of clubs with them. And then got bitten and then really gotten into it. Yeah.
Who knows, but it's just kind of a fun story. And some of the other things that I remember us having dinner down here in Naples in Southwest Florida, we started making all these different connections of things that we have in common. Now, did your parents, your adoptive parents, have any idea who my dad was?
No, zero, none.
Yet your middle name is his first name.
That's right.
Yeah, Charles, right?
My middle name is Charles.
Yeah. I thought that blew me away.
Kind of mind blowing. I don't know where that comes from. Another weird one, and maybe you're about to ask me about this, is, Dudley and I are sitting in an Italian restaurant in Rochester, and we both ordered chicken parm. Yeah. And I kind of look at him and say, "Oh, really? You like chicken parm?" He said, "I always order it if it's on the menu." And I said, "So do I." Yeah. Forever.
Right.
I've done that, and he does it, right?
Yeah.
Weird coincidence or
Yeah, who
some
knows? They're
genetic,
kind of just
who knows?
fun. Like we can just call it
Yeah.
fun. You happen to marry a Kathleen, and I'm a Kathleen,
I
right?
married a Kathleen, and my son just married a Kathleen.
Right. It's a great
Yeah.
name. And my grandmother was a Kathleen. And one of the things that when I first saw you, Dad sent a picture to me, and you had a hat on, and instantly I was like, you looked like him. However, you two have totally different body styles, right? You're tall
Yeah.
and lean, and
Right.
he's a little short and stocky, but
Right.
you absolutely 100% looked like him with a hat on. But more so, you look like my grandmother, and I know not in a feminine kind of way, just those features. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of her. I'll find a picture,
I
and I might
have.
post.
I have.
Yeah. Do
Yeah.
you see the
Yeah.
similarity
Yeah.
between you? You look a lot like my grandmother. It's remarkable. And so I'm going to post some pictures when this releases, and people can go to my Instagram and look at some of our family pictures, if you're okay with that, Joe.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. Just so you can kind of see the story behind that. But you and I have played several rounds of golf together. I get to see you every winter. I got to see you this summer. We went to your son's wedding.
Right.
All my kids and myself all flew up to be a part of your son's wedding in Rochester this summer, who I just met.
Yeah. Which is it's mind blowing, Kathy, the whole thing. And once in a while, when the normal vicissitudes of life settle down a little bit, this whole situation will pop back into my head, and I can't believe it. Sometimes it still doesn't seem like it's real.
Yeah.
What is very real, though, is that I'm the worst golfer in the family. So
Yeah. Well, there are some people who know how to play golf who don't play. You can totally beat them.
Okay, good. I'll keep that in mind. But it's been a reality check for my ego. I mean, as much as I love playing with all of you and would never miss an opportunity to do that, my ego has taken a reality check.
Yeah, that's all right. But you have a lot of people who will, maybe this is a benefit or not so much a benefit, help you with your golf swing. So, and maybe
Yes.
too much so.
And my mental game.
Yes, and your mental game, which is pretty solid.
I don't know about that.
I love that your wife, Kathleen or Kate, who doesn't play golf, listens to my podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of guys complain about how their wives don't really want them to play golf. She wants me to play. Yeah. She knows what it means to me. She knows what it does for me. She has never once objected to the amount of golf I play. And so among the many other things I love her for that.
Yeah. Well, she's awesome. And you play a lot of golf.
I do. Yeah. We got some really crazy guys up here in Rochester. And I think the only month we missed last year was February, when the snow cover was simply too deep to play. But doesn't matter what the temperature is.
You're one of those people.
And I'm not the only one. I'm lucky. I play at a place called Mendon Golf Club, and there are a bunch of other lunatics there. And even when they pull the pins out of the greens at Mendon, we will find places to play. I've played on frozen greens and fairways.
Oh my gosh,
snow-covered greens, and it's a great group of guys, and we just have fun doing it, even if we're frozen doing it.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you have a group of friends to play with and do something with, and you don't mind the cold. I have an under 50 and sunny rule. Because I've had to play golf in snow, like professional golf in snow, every kind of condition. And I finally got to the point where I'm like, if I don't have to play in this stuff, unless I'm preparing and I choose to play in it because I want to, prep myself, I'm going to just play on nice days. And if it gets under 50 and then it's cloudy, it's just so cold to me that I can't move.
If we had that rule here, it would be an even shorter season than it already is.
You'd only get in a few months.
Right.
Needless to say, I am so grateful that you came on the podcast. I think it's a really cool story. Yeah. And I really appreciate you being brave and courageous, I think, to come out here and tell your story about what went on in your life. And I know I speak for myself, but I also speak for the rest of my family. We love you, and we love having you a part of our family. And we're so happy you found us.
I feel the same way, and I was happy to do this. I was flattered you asked me, and even if I hadn't wanted to do it, if you asked me, I would have done it for you.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, Joe. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Kath. It was fun.
Well, there you have it. There's my new brother, Joe, who's my new brother for 4 years. So he's 4 years old to me. But this was just an interesting story about the genetics of golf, about how golf can connect people to one another, and how Joe found us through the game of golf. And also about how to open yourself up to having compassion for what other people have gone through and empathy for what they're going through and loving connection. We love having Joe and his family a part of our family, and we love that it all happened through the game of golf. I hope you have an amazing week. Happy New Year, and I look forward to 2022.